sometimes I can't find where I'm at.
Okay, well, let's read some pencils.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, that helps. Okay,
Thank you.
problem.
So on your notes, some questions that we're going to answer is, where did this idea of ceramics come from? How did people discover it? Why was it useful? What's the difference between ceramics and just clay? Talking about functionality, some types of clay. We're going to talk about the 4 stages of pottery and some different characteristics. We'll talk about some things to avoid and be careful about. 3 main ways to build that you're going to have choice in. How do you connect clay, and then a little bit about glaze. Okay? So just jot down anything you feel like. Again, no worries, whatever you think or find interesting. Okay? So first we'll start with the history. Let's answer this question of where did ceramics originate from? So we think that probably some kind of ancient person had some clay that they probably dug up near a river. The sediment is more clay-like near a riverbed, and they probably made some kind of crude vessel, and then it might have accidentally fell into a fire pit for a long period, and then that might be how they discovered that over a long time, the firing period, to higher temperatures, the clay changes chemically. So it actually does something called vitrification, and that just means that the separate clay molecules, which are called platelets, they're sitting like this after you build. This is like on a molecular level, and then when you fire them, they actually bond like this. So they come together permanently. That is why if you introduce water to a fire pot, it's not going to come back off into your water or your food. That's why it's so useful. Before it's fired, if you put water in it, it's eventually going to come back down to wet clay. So that is the big difference between clay and a fired ceramics piece. So this was really important in the history of humans for 2 reasons. One, you can cook, right? So now you, instead of having a raw saber-toothed tiger, now you have a cooked saber-toothed tiger. So it's healthier and you have more options nutritionally. And also, you can change from, a society that's dependent on one area. Now you can be more nomadic because you can store food and water in big clay vessels. So really important to the history of humans in general. So, can it be non-functional? Yes, it can. If you look at these examples, we've got our usual functional pieces, which is your everyday plates and cups and mugs and toilets and other things made out of fired clay. Or it can also be non-functional, which is still fired, but the definition is it's not appropriate for food or water. So it could be a decorative piece, like a talisman or some kind of little sculpture. Or it could even look functional, like this red vase, but could you physically put flowers in that? No. Also, if it looks functional but it has holes in it, technically that's non-functional. So it could be like a potpourri container, which you might think functional, but by the definition, since it doesn't hold food or water, that's still non-functional decorative piece. This could also count for kinds of firings that, or glazes that aren't food safe. So a low fire, like a raku or a smoke fire, which I'm going to show you some examples of, are technically non-functional, even if it looks like a mug that you could drink out of, because it's not safe. It's not food safe. You could also have like a big decorative sculpture. Even if it's a huge vase, it's still technically non-functional because you wouldn't have it in your cabinet. An example of a really famous non-functional art piece is the Terracotta Warriors. It could be a non-functional piece. Okay, there's 3 main kinds of clay. The first kind, and the most widely used because it's easiest to use, very functional, very durable, is stoneware. So probably around a ratio of like 75% of the time when you see something in a store to buy or you're in a ceramics class, it's usually going to be stoneware. So that's an example right there. It's usually like a white or gray clay body. So I'm going to let you pass this around and feel. This is the clay body that we're using. So it's gray and very malleable. Doesn't dry out too fast. Doesn't crack very easily as other kinds of clay. And it fires to a nice white. Okay? So this is the naked clay after it's fired. So it's gray in the first stage when you're using it, and then that's when it's dried out. This is when it's fired the first time. And I'll extrapolate a little bit on that in a second. So that is stoneware. Then we have earthenware, which is also called terracotta, or cast around pieces of wood. So you can see that terracotta is known for having very beautiful color. And here's the slip. So terracotta is harder to use, harder to build with. It cracks a lot more. It's, just hard to build weight onto it. And terracotta is special in another way. Remember when I told you when a piece is fired to a certain temperature that the molecules fuse together and it's vitrified and it holds water? Well, earthenware, no matter how high you fire it, it never fully vitrifies. So that is why you never see a teacup or a plate made out of terracotta, but you might see something on your porch with a plantain.
Right. Yeah.
A flower pot, right? A planter. So if you've ever watered your planter and seen a dark spot on the outside, that's because a little bit of water is seeping through those molecules that never fully vitrify. So it's great for things like, vitrify. So it's great for, anything that needs to remain a little porous. For instance, bricks also are high in terracotta because you don't want water to sit inside your building material. You want it to be able to air out and to dry out without molding. And again, used for a lot of art objects. It's very beautiful body, clay body, color. So you often don't see glaze on it. So for instance, the smoke fire that I mentioned, I grabbed, look at this. So this is terracotta. So you can see that it has this beautiful smoky texture. So this is fired once in the kiln, and then it's fired outside in a trash can with combustibles to get this smoky stuff. So would this be functional? No, because you can't get it wet. The smoky stuff would be damaged by water, and you wouldn't want to eat out of terracotta anyway. So it's very non-functional, but very decorative. And often these are burnished, so they're rubbed until they're really super smooth with a spoon. So it's a decorative technique. Alright, so that's earthenware. And then our last main type is porcelain. So what is made out of porcelain? Teacups of fine china, and also toilets and bathtubs. So there's a couple interesting properties to porcelain. It's a white clay body, and it's very hard to use. If you look in my bathroom, I have the one and only example of porcelain that I've ever made. And it was really tricky. It's almost like working with silly putty. But it's beautiful. It's a very pure clay body. Here's an example of a fired porcelain. I guess I did make two. That's my, it's my little guy. That's a pinch pad. So some other properties of porcelain, you usually don't glaze it or do a minimal, that has a pearlescent, mother of pearl on it, so it still retains the beautiful white clay body, but it doesn't completely cover it. You also see, on fine china, that people will do a luster detail or hand painted. There's a big thing to paint on china. If you were like, you know, a fancy lady, back in the 1800s or early 1900s. So porcelain's really fine. It can get a really thin wall. So that's why, another reason why it's used for china, is it can get really fine and really thin. So you can see even like my pinch pot, in comparison to this pinch pot, see how much finer I got with the porcelain. And it also has a different sound. When you ting it, when you ting your fine china at home, it's like a high-pitched ting sound versus like this, it's like just more boom. Porcelain's more fine. If you get it thin enough, you can actually see through fired porcelain. Like you can see light through it. So it's used for fine stuff, but it's also really strong and durable. So it doesn't chip easily. If you, you know, that's why it's used for china and also toilets and tubs. Okay, there's 4 stages. We're going to spend the most time in the first stage, which is greenware. So you can remember that you think about like a newbie, a greenie, you know, somebody that's green, they're just beginning. So greenware is that first initial stage. This is such a long stage, we spend so much time in it that we have some subcategories, some terminology that we use to describe different stages of greenware. So leather hard is this point. So kind of feel, this is when it's completely dried out. So this is at least like a week or 2 before it gets to this point. So this is actually bone dry technically. Leather hard is just like this, except for it still feels cold. You mentioned like temperature. The temperature is actually how I know if it's dry enough to fire. It has to be completely dry before I fire it. There can't be any water left in it or it'll explode. So I actually like put the bottom of the pot when I'm getting ready to fire on my arm. It's like a technique that you use, and if you feel any like cold temperature, then it's not bone dry. This is completely bone dry though. I don't have a leather hard example to show you, but you'll see. It's just leather hard is when you're done building and it's been out a couple days. So it's still dark, still got some water in it, but if you try to move, you know, one of your coils, it would just crack off instead of like being malleable. So that's leather hard. Then we fire it once. So this is after the first firing, which is called the bisque fire. So you can feel, you know, it's completely different. And it's also shrunk. So it shrinks 7.5% between when you make it and bone dry.
Straddle down.
And then it shrinks another 7.5% when it's fired after the bisque. So like these zombie fingers that we were working on, the keychains, we had to make the holes for the keychain like 15% bigger than we needed them.
So it shrinks how much?
7.5, like just as it dries naturally, and then another 7.5 when it's fired in a bisque. So that's those molecules vitrifying. So that shrinkage is important not only for planning, but also so that you understand why you can't have any water or air. So I already mentioned water is a no-no, you just gotta let it dry to avoid that. Air bubbles or air pockets. So you see how this has a hole in it? Yeah. So if this hole wasn't in it and this was an air pocket, this would violently explode because of the shrinkage compacting that trapped air. So it doesn't have to be a big hole, and it's unusual, like you'll know, if you have an air pocket, or occasionally you'll run into a natural air bubble, you just get it out. You just be aware that if you were to have trapped air, this is more of an issue when I talk to high school students, then it would be a problem. And it's because of that shrinkage. So the bisque fire is done, so that gets any water out that's left. Of course, we're trying to avoid water, but it gets any remaining water. So this is completely done, vitrified, solid piece. Now we can glaze it. So we can apply the glaze. We have 2 choices for glazing. Regular, natural, what you see usually for sale. So the natural glazes. Or you can use underglazes, which is kind of like a special exception glaze. So these are your bright colors. And this is a chart to show you all the underglaze colors. So the underglaze is not naturally shiny, it's matte. So if you see on the top, they're usually matte. Then the bottom of these swatches have clear glaze. So that's why they're shiny. So all of these have clear glaze because usually people want clear glaze because it makes it look finished. And it also is like better for cleaning, and like if you have a mug of coffee in it, it's easier to clean something that has a glassy finish, right? But sometimes sculpturally, some people like the matte look, such as this piece, which was done by a high school student named Caitlin. So this is sculptural. Oh yeah, that is cool. So this is all underglaze, and she likes it matte, so she's gonna leave it matte. So just to show you, that's an option. Now, since the underglaze is matte, it doesn't have the clear, shiny silica ingredient. Silica is same as glass, right? Similar to glass. So if you were to put something with silica, regular glaze or clear glaze, on a greenware pot, it would actually not allow that chemical, few more molecules of water out in the kiln. So that is why we have to do 2 firings. So we can't just put the glaze all in one step because it would melt. It's the glass. It fuses to your chemical pot chemically. So that's why if you chip your pot, it usually is not the glaze chipping off. It's a whole piece of pot because they're fused together. And that's what makes it so durable. But that's why we have to have the extra firing. So it's to allow any, chemical water. We're letting all the physical water evaporate before we fire it, but it actually still has like H2O molecules in it. So that's why it has to do the basic fire. That was confusing, but we apply the glaze, then we do one more fire, and it's a finished piece. So in summary, the one exception is the underglaze. Because it's matte, we can actually cheat and put it on greenware. So it gives you more options, and I'll talk more about options. But you can see that this is just bisqued. It is not glazed. So it had some yellow underglaze on it, and that's completely fine. So the zombie fingers, we painted the underglaze right on the naked clay. Then we fired them, then we clear glazed them today, and now I'm firing them again.
The zombie finish for the zombie wall.
Yes.
Or will they be for sale at zombie?
I'm just gonna give them away. Yeah. Alright, so I've already talked about this, no air bubbles. So to avoid any air bubbles, you just give a quick little knead to any clay that's like out of the bin. Because, in the bin, like you'll see pieces that people, didn't use, they're perfectly fine, and there's, I spray it down so it's reconditioned, but you might just need to give it a quick knead to get it all homogeneous and no air bubbles. So if your design happened to have a compartment, like, it was like a portrait of a mermaid coming out and your body was hollow and it just needed that for your design. You just poke a little needle hole in it and that'll let the air escape. Okay, 3 techniques to build.
Is that wedge? This is
Wedging is to get any air bubbles out and to make the mixture homogeneous.
What was the wedging again?
So the wedging is just a quick knead, like bread.
Okay.
Yeah. And you have to do that more with throwing. With hand building, it's not as important. Because with throwing, it has to be all the same, exactly the same on the wheel, or else you'll get inconsistencies. Hand building is a little bit more relaxed. Just gotta get any air bubbles out.
Oh my gosh, I can spell homogeneous to save my life.
Oh no. Alright, so 3 techniques to build. Coil, slab, and throwing. Coil is the most widely used and easiest. slab is still pretty easy, but it's tricky with drying time to get your slab dry enough to work with. So it's not just flopping all around, it's taking the shape you want. And throwing is on powder wheel. So I recommend if you're just starting, unless you have a specific idea, maybe stick with coil. But there's some cool options I've got for you for slab, and I can help you with it. So it's an option too. So here's some examples of coil. There's exposed and smooth. Now, the exposed sometimes looks a little bit more elementary unless you really finesse it. It's actually harder than the smooth because as you're building, instead of stopping every 4 and smoothing, you're having to keep all the coils looking perfect the whole way up without messing up what you've already done. So it's actually trickier, and a lot of people don't like this look. They like the smooth look, but it is an option. Here's another example of exposed coil. More often, it's used as a decorative element after you've built your pot. So like a little coil embellishment or a lid grabber that's a coil or something like that. Here's some slabs. So you see inherently they look a little different, flatter shapes. You can get more geometric stuff. You can build in layers with slab, and you can build a slab on top of coil. So you can see an example of a tile piece here that was kind of like a 3D painting done with slab. So you can cut out shapes. Slab is also going to be for your platters. So I have all these different platters and bowls. So if you want to do slab, you can maybe, use it as a template. Down these cute platters. So you basically lay your slab over top of your mold, and then you can create, whatever you're going to do on top. Either carve into it, or paint with underglaze, or do both, or you can build shapes on top. This one's actually terracotta. This one too.
Those alligators on top of that last one?
I think they're lizards.
Lizards.
Mm-hmm. Here's one. Terracotta. Yeah. So just keep in mind that you want to go as thin as you can with the slab because it is really heavy. Clay is going to be a lot heavier than plastic or metal. So that's slab. So you can see the leaf is probably laid over a bowl, to create the shape. So the only tricky part is you'll have to work with me on drawing. So I have 2 people that want to do slab in my intro. So I'm going to try to roll the 2 slabs for them at like 2 o'clock so that they have a couple hours to firm up so that they can work with them. Otherwise it's just going to be kind of a wiggly piece of clay until it dries up a little bit. But you can't let it dry too much because then it'll be like greasy. There's some thrown examples, so just to show you thrown pieces.
Oh, look at that huge one.
Yeah.
Just like elbow deep in that thing.
Yeah. So these are thrown, so you can see the thin wall, perfectly symmetrical by nature, and also usually done with natural glazes, not under glazes. And you usually have like a little footprint into them. So that's the bottom. You can see a wheel there, and very advanced throwing artist with that huge pot. So imagine like the piece of clay that she started with that she had to wrangle to get that going. Okay, so on to building. How do we connect our clay? A process called scoring and slipping. So this goes with the idea of 2 rough things stick together long term better than 2 smooth things, right? So that's why if you're gluing 2 pieces of wood, you sand both pieces, or if you're super gluing something, you try to find like a rough spot to fit together better than like 2 slick spots. So all you're gonna do to score is use your needle tool, which is trying to be your friend and do some cross hatching in the area that's going to be connected. And then the slipping is simply using the wet clay paste, which I make in the blender. It's just the same kind of clay that you're building with water made into a paste. You can either use the squeezy bottles, or some people like to squeeze out a big pile and use their finger, or you can use a little cup, a ramekin, and a brush. Totally up to you. You do not have to do this after every single coil. You do it about every 4. So you build up about 4 or 5, depending on the size of your coils. If you're using huge coils, you know, you might want to do it more often. If you're using fine coils, you can get away with like every 4 or 5. So this is to give it strong points all the way up your pot. So after you score, then you stop and smooth. That's the usual process. So there's many different kinds of tools. We've got our needle tool and other metal tools, trimming tools, shaping tools, little X-Acto knife tools, little curved blade tools. Then you've got your wooden tools that you're going to be using to smooth, especially this like spoon shape. That's a really popular smoothing tool. You've got wooden spoons that are going to help you, once your clay gets a little bit drier, more towards leather hard, and actually beat your pot and get some of the irregularities out. And then your rolling pin to do your any slab work, or every coil pot has a slab base that you roll out first. You've got your sponges. You've got this, which is called a rib. So there's 3 different kinds of ribs: wooden, metal, and rubber. So these are used for some different things, but mostly smoothing. So you're just going to hold it, bend it, pull it along the curve of your pot. And I really like the rubber for smoothing. The metal is good for smoothing if it's more dry. And you can also clean your table with this metal one. The wooden one is usually used for throwing, or cleaning the surface of your wheel as it's spinning. And we'll talk about any more tools as we go. Alright, we're almost through. It's got a little bit of details about glaze. We already kind of talked about this. You've got 2 main types of glaze. You've got your regular glaze, which is most common. Okay, underglaze is only common with me. That's not, and that's only because I grew up with a potter, a professional potter, like very close to my family, who taught me this technique. So it's more usual to see the more natural stuff, which I'm sure you've seen, you know, for sale at art galleries and stores. It's more likely to have more natural colors. But the underglaze is a nice addition to our palette. So if it's regular glaze, it's usually any glaze that I have. It's going to be food safe, microwave safe, dishwasher safe. So you don't have to worry about any of that. It's going to be fine. It can be poured, dipped, or painted on. We're usually going to be painting on, but in like big school, like at UMW, we had big 5-gallon buckets, and we actually made the glaze using like a scale and powders and like chemistry. It was crazy. I just order commercial glazes, which are good, you know, too. But they're going to be painted on to smaller quantities. So glaze, we've already mentioned. The main ingredient is silica. So it melts and fuses to your pot. So with that in mind, and I might have already mentioned this, where do you not put glaze ever? On the bottom. Right. So none on the bottom. So you can see that there's never usually any glaze on the bottom of any of these pots. Now, again, that special trick with the underglaze. See, you can do underglaze because it's not going to stick. But notice, see how it's matte? So no clear glaze. Because it can't float in the kiln, right? It has to be sitting on something. So it can't melt to that. So glaze is from the earth, just like the clay is. So it's going to chemically melt and attach permanently to your pot. So the colors are also usually from the earth. So your blues or cobalts, your reds are made from irons, and your green from copper. So, of course, many other minerals, you know. Again, in my ceramics class at UMW, we had a whole room of these little drawers, like Hogwarts, I imagine, and each drawer had a chemical compound for what powder it was. And we went over to our glaze recipe book, and we looked at the index card with like blue speckled robin's egg glaze, and then it had ingredient list, and we measured it out on the triple beam, added how much water it said, and then we had glaze. So it's really science to the glaze itself. It's really cool. All right, so now is the point where I want to give you one more resource. So first, are you missing the blanks that you want? The main ingredient to glaze at the bottom is silica. So that's why you can't put it on the bottom. And the two last questions we have on.
So it'll stick, right?
Right. So it'll actually fuse to my kiln shelf. And have to be like hammered off.
I bet you wouldn't appreciate it.
Unless we use the mat,
Unless you use the underglaze, and then you're fine. Yeah, I've actually had students like as punishment for glazing the bottom, like scraping kiln shelves and really kiln, like there's stuff called kiln wash that you put over it. But usually, like whoever's loading it can tell.
So what happens if you do accidentally get some on there? Is there a way to take it off?
Yes, you can just sponge it off. And a little bit doesn't matter, you know, it'll just have like a little flake of the kiln wash from the top of the shelf. It's not a big deal. And I also have little spikes that I can set it on. Like I have some of the fingers on spikes, just because they have a little bit of glaze on the sides and bottom. So there's options, but just generally like trying not to get glaze on the bottom. So this is a little prep sheet for you. It's just for ideas. So it kind of tells you, you know, we're doing small scale ceramics pot. You can do functional or non-functional. I've kind of mentioned, you know, animal mug or platter as the two main ideas, but I've listed like some more ideas here. Under functional, you could do coil or slab. You could do mug, bowl, cup, box, small pour jug, small vase. You really were ambitious, a tea set. Some non-functional ideas, relief tile, like kind of like the platter with the lizards or that rocket ship tile. You know, I've seen people do like a bigger one and have like a 3D painting basically, if you like that approach. A figurine or a talisman, and you could even incorporate that into something functional, like have a little like talisman giraffe stuck on the handle of your giraffe mug, and then have a giraffe print, you know, like a theme. Or you have like a little surprise animal on the bottom of your mug or bowl, or something like that. Or maybe like the tail of your animal swoops over to make the handle, you know. A literary tribute. I guess the example I'm about to show you of like a Whoville, made out of clay. A jewelry or belt buckle, those are actually kind of tricky because it's small scale. A wall hanging, so this is a wall hanging. So kind of like a mix, this particular one is a mix of slabish technique, but also coil. Is like coils that were kind of pushed together to make a slab. So wall hanging piece. Game pieces, like maybe you want to make a fancy chess piece or something. A mask. Here's three mask examples. Here's one, kind of like a girl group there. And this is underglaze. So you can see underglaze, you can have so many similar properties to paint. Layering, blending, dabbing, splatter. You can't do that with glaze because it just mushed together. But the underglaze will retain it. Here's another mask. So this one is a great example of wax resist, which I'm going to tell you more about as one of our surface options. And then this mask, this was actually painted, not glazed. Do you see how it looks different? So this was never fired again. This is just this fired and then painted with acrylic. So definitely like not LARP, you know, and not as durable as these pieces that were fired again. Alright, so we're talking about surface embellishment, masks, fish tank ornament, paint. Alright, so these questions at the bottom are just to help you formulate your idea. So I'm going to show you a couple more surface embellishment techniques, and I just want you to jot down any that you like or want to remember. And I want you to think about some other questions to answer on your idea. And you can also research online a little bit, and you're welcome to references if you have a specific idea that you want to do an animal mug, you want to look at some different animal mugs, totally fine. So you want to ask yourself, construction type, am I doing coil or slab or both? What is the functionality or use, if it has one, or decorative? The shape of your base, is it going to be circular, which is the usual thing? Or is it going to be kind of irregular? Or is it going to be a square, or is it going to be an organic shape, you know? So shape of your base. The shape of your pot when finished. Is it going to be round? Is it going to be cylindrical? Is it going to be, you know, a flare out at the top? Something like that. You want to think about the height and width. The more horizontally you build with wet clay, the more it's going to want to sag. So remember, gravity is going to pull down anything that's out. Anything that's up is going to be stronger and easier, but if you really want to start a flare, all you got to do is let it dry a little bit, because as it gets more dry, it's stronger. So for instance, if I wanted to build this like this, instead of stopping, I would just build a couple coils, let it dry for 30 minutes or an hour, then build more, just be a little bit more gradual. You know, I would have high school kids that like got super excited, like, and then it's like, yeah, and then it just really, you have to be a little patient if you have horizontals, okay? So let's look at some of these surface ideas. Here's two fancy ones. These are some ancient Japanese techniques. It's just a fancy way to say scratching, basically. The sgraffito is when you do slip or underglaze and then scratch it out. And I have these techniques on a little sampler board here. So here's an example of sgraffito in the underglaze there. And then also in the naked clay. So if you did in the naked clay, and then you put glaze on top so that the glaze went into the cracks, then you scraped off the clay, that's machina. It's really hard, actually. Here's some other ones. Okay, so you got stamping. I've got all kinds of cool stamps. Rolling, so you could roll, you know, the stamp over a slab, or you could even put, like, I've taped a stamp to the rolling pin before. You can incise or cut out shapes, like you can make a candle holder or something that you want, you know, holes in to reveal something inside. Burnishing, so that's what I mentioned with the terracotta being so smooth. That's because we physically took a metal spoon and rubbed it, and it makes all the clay platelets align so that it becomes soft. Another example, like a better example, is in the bathroom. There's two terracotta pots that I did that are both smoke fired and burnished. Impressing, so that's, you know, similar to stamping with like a bigger object, or you can even use like a seashell or any object that you want to make textured with, like the spines of a fork or anything. Hey, welcome. Sit behind. Come in. We're just taking, if we hear any ideas that we like at this point. So these are just surface embellishments. Slip is one of my favorites. So you can actually use slip in the squeezy bottles as a decorative element. So you can see a little mini sample here. And that's over top of underglaze. This is something that's done in greenware, right? Because it's clay, so it has to be done before it's fired. So you do the underglaze first. Remember, we can underglaze on greenware, and then we get to do this special technique. So let me show you. Keep mentioning my friend who's a potter. These are two examples of his work. So these are thrown, so they look a little bit different than if you're hand building. But I wanted to show you the underglaze and then the slip as an embellishment technique. This one's another example that has the slip over the underglaze, and then it also has masking. See that straight line, which is the last technique with masking tape. This one also has slip. The slip was a little too thick, so it's like a little chunky. We'll make sure it's a good viscosity when we do it. Wax resist is another one of my favorites. So I mentioned this mask is a really good example. So you can see all that texture. So what color do you think was applied first?
Red.
Yes, the red. So he did this whole area red without really worrying about the shape. And then he applied the wax, which is like liquidy wax. Then he put the black. Then when it's fired, it's just like salad dressing. The oil and the wax resists the water-based underglaze, so it can't hold on, and it just like releases in the kiln in this irregular kind of texture. So it's a really cool technique, especially if you don't want it to be super neat or exact, because it's a little unpredictable. That's another wax resist one. So it's more for if you want like a loose texture, like a kind of grungy bottle look. And it's nice with a light color and then a dark color because it's high contrast. Oxide painting. If you remember like the pure color, cobalt, copper, iron, I actually had those pure powders. And if we mix those with water, it's like painting with watercolor on the surface of a pot. So you glaze first and then you can like watercolor with oxides. This is an example. So that's copper oxide. This kind of turned like gray, but I think that's because there wasn't enough glaze underneath. So if you see like on the areas that have more glaze, it's like a watercolor look. The stenciling, of course, works better if you're on like a platter or like a flat surface because it's hard to like get a stencil to work on an organic shape. And then the masking technique. So if you jot down any of those that are interesting to you on your planning sheet. And then I want to answer the last question on our notes, which was, what is the main difference between a kiln that's loaded for the first time, the bisque fire? So, you know, you're loading in your leather hard, and they're going to come out like this, and then the glaze fire. So, look at how those are loaded. What's the main difference physically?
It feels together.
Yeah, exactly. They can actually touch in the bisque because the naked clay or even clay with underglaze will not stick to each other. It's only the glaze. So the glaze fire is a little bit more challenging for me or anybody who's loading because you can't have any of them touch. So you can have them super close because you want to save kiln space. You know, you can have them like this close, but they just can't touch at all. The bisque, you can just throw them in there, you can stack them, you can have bowls and bowls, it's totally fine. And those are two different temperatures too. And those are side loading kilns. I'm sure you've seen my kiln as a top loading, so it's just different kinds of kilns. These are probably, that one's an electric kiln, just like mine. You can see the little grooves in the side, that's where the elements are. And this big one is probably like a gas kiln, which is a little bit more complicated. Just to show you, there's special kinds of firings. I've already mentioned some of them. These are low fires, so they're never food safe. They're just decorative. But there's the smoke fire, which this is an example, the two in the bathroom. So this is bisqued, but then I smoke fired them in a trash can in my backyard with combustibles. And you can sometimes get cool textures. If you see the leaf texture on the side there, I put pretty cool process. The raku, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but raku is a really fun and exciting way to fire, but it's really dangerous. It uses like an open gas line. So you take your open gas line, like hose, and you just set it there like on a brick, like on pavement, and then your kiln is a hood. So you set your hood over top of your pots, and then it comes to a certain temperature, which is actually a low fire compared to what the kiln would go to. And there's only one kind of glaze, so you'll have like blue raku. You just coat your pot, and then you never know what kind of craziness is going to happen, but it's always metallic. So this guy is raku. So you can see wherever there's not glaze, it gets kind of smoke fired. And where there is glaze, it's crazy, like pearlescent metals. So the craziest part of this firing is you do it with a group, and you stick poles in the top of your kiln hood, and then you have two people lift it off, and then really quick, you have people ready with tongs. You grab the hot pots, and then you have to throw them in a trash can full of combustibles, like newspaper and sawdust, close the lid, and the combustibles, the hot pots burn them, so it sucks all the oxygen out of the air. The lack of oxygen is what makes it get metallic and crazy. Then you gotta grab those, dunk them in cold water to freeze it. So it's really crazy. They would never let me try it most of the times. Gee, I wonder why. Yeah. They wouldn't even let me do a smoke fire, but one day maybe. Last time I did it was at Mary Wash in the back courtyard with the gas line. But if you YouTube raku, it's really fun to watch. I know Liberty Town did a raku workshop this year, so I'm going to look out for the next one and let you guys know, because I want to do it too. Here's just some more examples of modern ceramics. So shapes, colors, techniques. There's that Whoville example I was telling you about. So again, like, just keep in mind, ceramics does not have to be, an ancient technique. Like, you can have a modern shape, it can be decorative, it can be non-functional, you can have bright colors. There's so many things you can do now. Tea sets. So remember, if you wanted to spend a little extra time, or you really love this medium when you try it, you could always do like a group in a theme, a tea set or a mug and plate or something like that. Okay, so that is the end. Oh, here's some of mine. Those two are the ones I was talking about in the bathroom, the terracotta smoke fire. And there's also the distorted lady in the bathroom.
Oh, I love that lady.
And she was actually done with coil.
Seriously?
So I started with two big circle slabs, and then coiled like this, and then gradually joined, and then got smaller. So she's completely hollow. If you check her out in the bathroom, her neck is open. So that's the only way that she could have been done, because you can't have much thicker than an inch before it starts to crack in the kiln when it's fired. That one at the bottom middle that looks like a shell, that's also in the bathroom. That one's porcelain. So it's only clear glaze on top of it, because the clay body is pure white. And you can also notice the very thin wall, to be that fine wall, and the delicate details. On the middle far right, looks like brass knuckles, kind of. That is a slab that I just put together like this and made a mug. And then cut holes out for the fingers. The shapes were done with masking tape and underglaze to get those sharp shapes. So there's all different things you can do. That vase on the top left is just coil, and then it was koi fish on the surface, 3D. So I made those with slab, and then took little pieces of clay to make scales. So you can do texture on top of your finished top. So let's just see if we have any questions. So on your notes, the last two little questions there. What is the difference between bisque and glaze physically, visually? The bisque can touch. Why? Because there's no glaze to fuse together. A few surface texture choices, so hopefully you jotted a couple down that you liked. You want to think about how your pot is going to be different, unique, or creative, the shape, glaze, and surface, and that is further extrapolated on your cut sheet. Any questions or thoughts at this point? Okay, so there's a pile here that I've collected of a few more references. It's cut off, but this is an animal mug with a little bird, and it has a little bird inside. So that's a regular glaze. You can see it's kind of like molted, more fluid, less control. You can't do like detailed painting like you can with the underglaze. This is from my friend Steven. So these are two of his throne pieces, but I wanted to show you this white clay body. So it's just clear, but then look how beautiful it looks with a little bit of like Asian style painting on top. It's like underglaze over white. Same thing with that platter. I just love that look. And then on the edge of that platter is little dots and slip. So it's a nice little extra texture. Here's another picture. This is just his work at a show. So you can see all the different shapes, but always with that bright underglaze, always with slip trailing on top. And then my brother sent me this idea from a gift shop in Montana. It's a fish bird feeder.
That's awesome.
So you just never know like where inspirations can strike you. Background on it, but I thought it was super cute. Adult slip trailing.
Nice. It's perfect. What is it?
So those are just some quick ideas that I pulled. There's tons more online. If you just like have the direction that you're going, you can kind of do a little bit more research or get some more references if you like. But at this point, unless you have any questions, I would just kind of like look at examples if you need to, do a little bit of brainstorming if you need to. So we'll all spend a few minutes kind of making sure we all have our direction, and then I can give like a quick demo of how to start. Sound good? It's exposed coil, bone dry. This is a bisque fired pot. So if you guys feel this is air dry versus the kind we're using, the more finished fired kind. So you can see like this is gonna last forever.
Right.
This would fall apart if you started messing with it. So the air dry feels similar. This is air dry, but you can see that it just crumbles. It's hard to use. Our clay is going to be way more usable. And then this is stoneware that we're using, and then this is terracotta. I don't know where that little piece of porcelain went. This is splatter, so with underglaze over the white clay body with clear glaze on top. This is underglaze and it has some nice graffito scratched into it first. It has blending, and it's just to be a piece of art. It's not like functional, it's just a little organic shape. We talked about like you can do a sculptural piece and add it, you know? Whether it's functional or non-functional. So there's all kinds of different textures and embellishments.
How was this built? Is that hand?
So this was either thrown or done like in a factory, like with a mold, because you can actually like it says made in China in the bottom, so it's probably poured into a like mass production mold to get that shape. And then this is an example of a thrown pot. So you can see like thrown pieces are like perfectly symmetrical, thin walls, because the centrifugal force actually formed them. There's bowls, you know, around on our counter that are thrown too.
And these are hand built?
That's hand built. So that's smooth coil. So I was still built with coil, but it used to look like this, and then they smooth the excess roundness of the coils into the cracks. And you got to do that gradually or they'll dry out. This is a nice one. It's done in coil, but then these embellishments are done with slab, but not too thick, so it's not too prominent. It's still just decorative. You can even go thinner, you know? This one too has like decorative slab and a little bit of slip trailing. Some wax resist, which is like one of my favorites. Okay, I'm turning this off now. Bye bye, Facebook.